Hi, I'm Scott Schwefel, and I've been an Insights Discovery accredited practitioner for 12 years. I've been using the Insights Discovery profile for sales training, team building, and leadership development. The best way to experience the Insights Discovery profile is in a program, a workshop, or with one-on-one coaching from an accredited practitioner. This video tutorial is not meant to replace that live experience, but it will give you a basic understanding of the Insights Discovery profile, what it means to you, and how to understand and interpret the graphs and the wheel at the back of the profile. What you'll need is your Insights Discovery profile, and if you have any of our colorful tools, have those with you as well. Pause the video right now if you need to collect your Insights Discovery profile. Got your profile? Great, let's get started. The first thing to be aware of is that the concept of perception was very strong in the Jungian psychology that underpins the Discovery profile. What it means is each of us sees the world differently. As you look at this image of a lion and a kitten, think for a minute about when you first become self-aware, when your perception kicks in and you begin to have an idea, a notion of who you are and how you show up to the rest of the world. This is uniquely different for everyone. What this means is everyone has a unique perspective on the world and everyone views the world differently. This concept of how we all view the world differently is what underpins every single Insights Discovery profile. It helps us realize why we may see the same thing as someone else and both walk away with different conclusions. So think about that concept as you think about your profile and what it means to you.
Hi, I'm Linda Schwefel, and I've been an Insights Discovery practitioner for the past 8 years. I'd like to take you through the next portion of our Insights Discovery profile debrief and talk to you a little bit about the Insights color energies. Red energy is competitive, demanding, determined, strong-willed, and purposeful, about getting things done. Sunshine yellow, sociable, demonstrative, enthusiastic, persuasive, about enjoying the journey. Earth green, caring, encouraging, patient, and relaxed. And finally, cool blue, cautious, precise, deliberate, a little more questioning, and a little more formal. Let's move to our understanding of on a not so good day, or what we would call bad day use of energies. What tends to happen when we are under stress, we show up a little bit differently, and we're interacting with others differently. Those 4 colors show up in a different manner. Fiery red tends to be aggressive, controlling, driving, a little bit overbearing, intolerant, and they have a lack of patience, especially under stress. Sunshine yellow energy shows up excitable, frantic, indiscreet, a little bit flamboyant, and hasty. Earth green energy tends to show up docile, bland, plodding, a little bit reliant, and they tend to be stubborn. And finally, cool blue energy shows up stuffy, indecisive, suspicious, cold, and reserved. There's a law of opposites that comes into play as well here. The opposite of fiery red energy is earth green energy. The opposite of cool blue energy is sunshine yellow energy.
Now we understand the meaning of the Insights color energies on a good day, and also the meaning on a bad day when we might be operating under stress, or actually just when our opposite type, somebody who leads with our opposite color energy, might simply have a bad impression of how we are using that color energy. Always understanding that we are not the ones who determine when we're overusing the energy, but often it's the people that are experiencing us in the moment. So there's good day energies, bad day energies, and also the dynamic of opposites that we discussed. Now we're going to talk about Jungian preferences, the psychology that underpins the model and helps determine the meaning of these color energies. In 1921, Carl Jung wrote a book called Psychological Types. In that book, in chapter 10, he defined the way in which people gather information and make decisions. Also within that model was their orientation towards the world, which he defined as introversion and extroversion. As you can see by the slide, Carl Jung talked about the way people react to outer and inner experiences as either introversion or extroversion. He called those the attitudes. Someone could be much more introverted or much more extroverted, or actually utilize a combination of both. Just think about for a moment, where are you in that spectrum? Are you more introverted or are you more extroverted? Give that some thought. Now, Wherever someone falls in that spectrum, they also gather information. And Jung defined these as functions. The functions of sensing and intuition are the ways in which Carl Jung suggested people gather information. People who lead with high sensation tend to gather information around them through their five senses. It's what they can see and what they hear. It's tangible and it's present and realistic in the moment. A way to think about sensation is defined as it is what it is. Very tangible and easy to prove to others. Very different from sensation is intuition. Carl Jung defined intuition as our sixth sense. The way in which people gather information, he defined as a knowing of information, but not knowing from whence it came. So some people that seem to move forward working with their gut feel, or just believe they know something to be true, likely gathered it using intuition. People that take in the data and use their senses to understand what's happening around them tend to rely on sensation to gather information. Regardless of the way in which a person gathers information, again, using Jung's two functions, is the way in which we then make a decision. Some people make a decision based on data, facts, and logic. We tend to call those people thinkers. In fact, if you listen, people tend to reflect that type of decision making in their language. Thinkers say, I think. What do you think? Very different from folks who make decisions like that are people who make decisions based on people, feelings, and relationships. We tend to call those people feelers. They make people or relationship or feeling-based decisions. In fact, you can also hear it in their language. They tend to say, how do you feel? Or what do you feel like for lunch? Pause and reflect for a few moments on how you believe you use Jung's attitudes and functions yourself. Do you tend to be more introverted or extroverted? Give that some thought. How do you tend to gather information? Is it through data around you that's present and realistic in the moment? Or do you tend to rely on information that you gathered from your sixth sense or your gut feel? Intuition tends to be all about possibilities and what could be. And again, sensation tends to be about what is present in the moment. Now you're aware of how you've gathered the information. Think about how you make your decisions. Is it based on people, feelings, and relationships? Do you tend to say, I feel? How do you feel? Or is it based on data, facts, and logic, and you tend to say, I think? What do you think? The unique combination of these two attitudes and four functions defines the whole of Jung's psychology as it relates to psychological type. And what we're trying to help you understand using your Insights Discovery profile is the unique combination of these attitudinal functions, as Jung called them, that each of us uses to gather information about our world and make decisions. As you can see by the next image, extroversion is represented in our model by red and yellow energy. Both represent extroversion. On the other end of the spectrum, blue and green energy on the left side of the model represent introversion. Those people tend to be more quiet in their utilization of blue and green energy, and people who lead with high red and yellow energy tend to speak more. In fact, people with high red and yellow energy speak to think. People with high blue and green energy think before they speak. Again, give some thought to which one represents you. The top of the Insights Discovery model represents thinking-based decision makers. People who lead with high blue and high red energy tend to be thinking-based decision makers who say, I think. What do you think? People who lead with high green and yellow energy tend to be feelers and tend to say, I feel. How do you feel? When you put together the combination of introversion, extroversion, thinking and feeling in the model as you can see it, you see how the color energies are clearly defined. People with high red energy tend to be extroverted thinkers. Across the Insights wheel, the opposite earth green energy is represented by people who lead with introversion and feeling, or introverted feelers, we call them. Cool blue energy is represented by introverted thinkers. And again, the opposite energy across the Insights wheel, yellow energy represents extroverted feelers. That's the psychology that defines the four Insights color energies. And at this point, you're beginning to understand which of these color energies you tend to use and which of these color energies you tend to be reluctant in your usage of. What I'd like you to do If you have the Insights tools in front of you, the Insights foam blocks, take them out of the package if you haven't already and stack them according to the color energies in the order that you believe you use them. Most like you on top, down to least like you on the bottom. If you don't have the Insights blocks, simply make a note to yourself. Which energy do you lead with? Which might be your second most used? Which is third? And certainly which is your last or lowest color energy?
Let's open up our Insights Discovery profile and talk about exactly what you have in front of you. Inside, you'll find the following sections. The overview section. You also have an introduction into the key strengths within your Insights Discovery profile. We'll talk a little bit about possible weaknesses. Value to the team. What specific gifts are you bringing to the team that you're on? Communication pages. We'll look into exploring good communication and barriers to communication with you. The blind spots section helps us understand how we're showing up typically under stress. Let's open up to the overview section, and what I'd like you to do is pause the video right now and take a minute to read through your overview section. What I would encourage you to do as you read through your overview, if there's a sentence you read that you disagree with or aren't sure about, I would like you to put a question mark next to that sentence. I'll tell you what to do with that once we come back to the profile after you've read your overview section. Now that you've read the overview, what I'd like you to do is count up the number of question marks you put in the overview section. I'd like you to do a check into the validity of your Insights Discovery profile by asking people who may know you well whether or not they think that you actually show up that way.
Now that you've had a chance to read the overview and validate it for yourself, you probably get a sense of how well it describes you. Believe it or not, there's more than 100 billion unique combinations of discovery profiles that our system can produce, meaning every person in the world can have their own unique discovery profile, which is very powerful. What I'd like to do now is move from the overview section, and again, remind you to take the time to validate it with others who know you well. But I want to take you to the back of the profile and help you understand how we created the Insights Discovery profile and what the graphs and the Insights wheel mean to you individually. So I'd like you to go to the last page in your profile, the page that shows the Insights Discovery bar graphs. Take a look at this slide. This is an actual question from the Preference Evaluator, question number 3. And what you get a sense of is that we actually asked each of you the same question 25 times in a row. We literally asked you how much red, blue, green, and yellow energy you perceive to be in yourselves. As you can see in the example, when someone chose most, or M for most, for buoyant and light-hearted, they actually chose the color yellow energy. And you can see the yellow bar is rated with a height of 6. Determined and dominant, which represents fiery red energy, was selected to be a 5. And you can see the fiery red energy, again at a height of 5, just below the yellow energy. Exact and precise represents cool blue energy, and because they rated it 3, you can see the 3 on the bar graph. And lastly, in every question, when a term or pair of words was rated L for lowest or least, in this case calm and even tempered, which represents earth green energy, you see a 0. What we did is take all 25 of your word pair answers and average them out to create for you what we call conscious persona, which, as you can see in this slide, is the graph on the left. If you look at the graph on the left in your own profile, it represents your selection of the amount of each of the 4 Insights color energies that you chose. What this left-hand graph represents is who we think we are, who we want to be, and actually who we believe we are expected to be. For many of us, it's determined by the role that we play. It's how people might experience you when you are consciously interacting with them. Think of it as the way that you tend to act. I sometimes tell people that it represents their game face or a mask that they put on, a way that people choose to show up and interact with the world around them. So just take a moment and look at your left-hand graph, and also take a look at the blocks if you have our tools and stack the foam blocks for your color energies initially, or take a look at what you suggested was the order of the colors that you believe you use. What the left-hand graph represents is your actual color energies, most like you on top, down to least like you on the bottom. Another way to think about the left-hand graph as if you're a Facebook user, the left-hand graph represents the profile picture that you carefully chose to show people just how cool you might be. It's very consciously selected with awareness of the impact it may have on other people. As we move to the right-hand graph, your less conscious persona, think of that as a photograph of you on Facebook that a friend may have tagged when you were unaware that the photo was being taken. It actually represents how you might react rather than how you might act in the left-hand graph. The right-hand graph tends to be how someone shows up when you are unaware of your own behavior. Another way to think about the right-hand graph is how we sometimes wake up in the morning unaware of who we are and how we are showing up. There's a moment, if you remember from our perception slide, when the kitten looks in the mirror and sees itself as a lion. It's the moment at which many of us wake up and look in the mirror and begin to think about who are we consciously choosing to be that day. Understand also, it does not always represent someone's persona at work, represented by the left-hand graph, or their way they show up at home as represented by the right-hand graph, because we realize over time that people move back and forth between conscious and less conscious states of mind, sometimes whether they are at work or whether they are at home. We do know that many people tend to operate out of consciousness or operate out of the left-hand graph more frequently at work because they're aware of their behavior. And when we go home, or if you think about letting your hair down or relaxing driving home from work, you might recognize the move into less conscious awareness in the right-hand graph. So if we understand that operating out of less conscious is represented by the right-hand graph, and yet when we move to consciousness, we alter many things about how we show up and how we use the insights color energies. Another powerful component of insights discovery is the preference flow graph. What the preference flow graph represents is how we choose to dial up or dial down our energies when we move from our less conscious state of mind to our conscious state of mind. Those of you that might be old enough to remember an equalizer on a stereo, it's simply the ability to choose to amp up or ramp up more of what you would like to show to others, or to tone down what you would like to show less of. The right-hand graph represents an individual who leads with yellow energy, followed pretty evenly by fiery red and earth green energy, and showing very low cool blue. But this person might work in a role where they believe bringing more cool blue energy, cautious, realistic, and precise energy and behaviors might serve them well. So as you can see by the preference flow, the graph in the middle, they are actually raising up or spiking up their cool blue energy to demonstrate more of it when they move to consciousness. That spiking up represents effort. In fact, the preference flow is a good representation of the effort that people make to spike up and bring more of certain energies to the work that they do, or to allow certain color energies to fall. The result of the effort they make to raise up that blue energy, that high blue spike in the preference flow, shows up as 13% blue energy in their left-hand conscious graph. Now what happens for many of us is we tend to believe that the effort we make is seen by everyone, but the truth is others around us will see us either represented by the left-hand graph, in this case 13% blue energy, or even when we're unaware, by the right-hand graph where we're only demonstrating 1% cool blue energy. What that tends to mean for us is we believe we show more of the energies that we spike up in our preference flow typically than other people see. In the preference flow graphs that you may have where energies are falling down, it is actually the fact that we are allowing these energies to fall and demonstrating less of them in consciousness. The last piece of information that's important to understand is the number underneath the preference flow we call preference flow percentage. Each of you has a unique preference flow percentage, and what it actually measures is the amount of energy that you expend to move from your less conscious right-hand graph to show up as your left-hand conscious graph. Think of it as the amount of energy that it takes for you to choose to show up a certain way. It is not 0 to 100%, however. It is actually, as you can see in the next graph, it ranges from negative 66.7 all the way up to positive 66.7, with a mode of 35%, which means most profiles that we see fall close to the range of 35%. Some of you might be much lower, some of you might be much higher. I've actually worked with hundreds of people who were at 66.7% positive. What that means for them is when they think about showing up and moving to consciousness, that they stretch themselves as far as the Insights Discovery graphs can measure. Now, let me say something about preference flow. It's very important. There's not a good answer for preference flow. It's not better if it's higher or better if it's lower, but it's a very personal decision that you make about how you feel about the number that is yours. I've worked with people at 66.7%, which means when they wake up and stretch themselves to consciousness, they do stretch significantly to show up a certain way. Some people, in fact, most of them tell me they're very comfortable and in fact energized when they think about showing up that way. Other people that have been at 20, 25, even 35% have shared with me that they find themselves feeling tired or tense or exhausted as a result of the energies that they are stretching, even though it is not as high as some other people. What this means is, as you look at your own preference flow percentage, you need to make a decision about how you feel about the impact that that amount of stretching has on you. If it's positive, we suggest you continue to do what you're doing. If it's positive, however, and you're feeling stretched to the point that it's tense or creating anxiousness or anxiety or tension in what you do and how you show up, we would encourage you to think about maybe pulling back on some of those color energies or giving more conscious thought to how they serve you. Ultimately, what we recommend people learn how to do is try and bring more of their most natural self, the right-hand graph, into the work that they do, so that when they are choosing to ramp up color energies, it's actually based on the true need to bring that color energy up. An example might be if I'm sitting down to work on my taxes, it'd be a good time to spike my blue energy higher. If I had to give a speech to the company, it's a great opportunity to spike my yellow energy up, to bring a little more energy and enthusiasm to how I present to others. As you think about your graphs and as you take a look at your conscious, less conscious, and preference flow graphs, begin to spend some time taking in what it means to you, and if you were to begin to change it, what might you choose to change? So as you can see by the bar graphs page in your Insights Discovery profile, there's a great developmental opportunity for all of us to better understand how we show up operating out of our less conscious right-hand graph, what we're like when we move to consciousness in our left-hand graph, and probably most importantly, what is happening in our preference flow. What energies are we dialing up and what energies are we allowing to fall to help shape who we are choosing to be to interact best based on what we do. One of the powerful pieces of discovery is where we go next, which is the power of understanding teams and the relationship team members have using the Insights Discovery wheel. So let's take a look at what we call your Insights wheel position and what it means in terms of where you fall in the model, and also what it means in relationship to your teammates, direct reports, or even customers. Turn to the page in your profile that demonstrates the Insights wheel like the slide you can see now. What you notice right away is that it appears to be a fairly complicated model, but in fact it's not. If you think about all the ways you could stack 4 blocks or the potential order of your 4 Insights color energies, there are 24 unique combinations if they are equally stacked top to bottom. Because there are 24 unique color combinations in terms of their order, there are 24 spokes in the Insights wheel. Each spoke of the wheel represents a different color order. As you can see in the example I'm showing you, it appears there are 2 dots or wheel positions. One is the less conscious faded dot. It represents the right-hand bar graph. The other is the conscious or brighter dot, and it simply represents the left-hand graph. Many people see what appears to be 2 dots on their Insights wheel. Some of you have what appears to be a singular dot. What that means is you still have 2 and they rest on top of each other. So if you have 1 dot or 2 dots that appear to be 1, it's your Insights wheel position. If you have 2 dots, the brightly colored dot represents what we call your wheel position because it represents your conscious left-hand graph. Now, while there can be one of 24 spokes based on the order of your color energies, you also notice there are 3 concentric rings. What that indicates is the intensity of the color energies. Most people fall in the ring that you see in the example you're looking at. That middle ring represents profiles that have 2 color energies in consciousness above the midpoint, meaning 2 color energies that are high. and 2 color energies low in their left-hand graph. In fact, 54% of the population falls there. If you move closer to the center of the model, the innermost ring represents what we call an accommodating personality or an accommodating wheel position. And what that simply means is 3 color energies above the midpoint and 1 below. We call it accommodating because a person has 3 color energies above the midpoint where they might be more likely to lean into those color energies and accommodate the color energies of others more easily. We know that 43% of our profiles represent a wheel position for someone who falls in that innermost ring, accommodating. The outermost ring, which represents an individual who has just 1 color energy above the midpoint, we call focused, because they tend to be focused on that one particular color energy, and it's much more rare to see. In fact, someone's conscious wheel position only shows up in the focused ring about 3% of the time. So 24 spokes representing 24 combinations of color energies combined with which of the 3 rings your conscious wheel position falls in. Each wheel position is also designated with a number. The number itself does not have any meaning, but it is simply a way to point at one of the 72 possible wheel positions. The next thing you may notice is on the model there are some spokes, 8 of them in fact, which are shaded. The 8 shaded spokes represent an individual whose top 2 color energies are opposite colors. It represents an individual who might lead with high red and high green energy, or who may lead with high blue and high yellow energy. The spokes are gray because an individual who leads with 2 opposite colors and is able to shift them slightly literally would appear to jump across to the opposite side of the model. That's why the spokes are gray. They represent a channel or a pathway to move from one side of the model to the other side of the model. 9% of our profiles come in those creative positions. The last thing that you'll notice is the outermost ring of the Insights wheel. It's where we label what we call the 8 types. And in doing so, we move beyond the simplicity of the 4-color, 4-quadrant model, and we bring in something called Jung's rational and irrational types. You still see the original 4 colors represented, and you see that we've labeled the 4 original colors. Fiery red is now director, sunshine yellow is inspirer, introverted thinking earth green is represented by the supporter, and the observer represents cool blue. Those are Jung's rational types. Jung defined them as rational types because the top and the bottom color energies are opposite. It does not indicate rational versus irrational behavior. It was simply Jung's definition of highest and lowest color energies being opposite. The other 4 of the 8 types that you see are obviously colorful blends of the original 4. Someone with high red and yellow energy tends to fall in motivator, which is colored orange. Now what those 4 irrational types, as Jung called them, represent, again, is not irrational behavior, but simply the combination of a top and bottom color energy, which are not opposites. One last thing to say about the Insights wheel is that the labels of the 8 types tend to represent competencies that people can bring based on their unique set of preferences. Meaning, motivator simply represents someone who might exhibit the skill of motivating others to action. Inspire represents inspiring others. As you work your way around the wheel, helping others, supporting others, coordinating others and things, observing others and things, or even reforming others and things. And then finally directing self and the actions of others. As you look at your Insights Discovery wheel position, take note of the 8-type label and challenge yourself. Is that one area in which you bring strong competencies based on your unique Jungian combination? The last thing that we use the Insights wheel for is to understand the dynamic and the culture of teams. If you take a look at your Insights wheel position and imagine every team member that you have, whether it's 10, 15, or 1,500, plotted in their unique wheel positions, it shows you an actual psychological map of where people fall in an organization, who's like you, who's your opposite type directly across the wheel, and where the general population of your team sits. It helps understand culture based on where the number of employees or staff or team members fall in the Insights Discovery wheel. Take a look at this example. It's just a generic example of what a typical team might look like. But in organizations that we work with, we create a map of the organization that shows where everyone falls. And in their wheel position, it's also named so that there can be an understanding of who's like you, who's your opposite type, and who you can therefore work with or benefit from the opposite set of skills that they may bring. It's a very powerful way to look at and diagnose and understand organizations. We call it the Insights Team Wheel.
Let's take into consideration recognizing type in others. Sometimes it's very, very simple. Give some thought to how you show up on an elevator. Also give some thought around which of these personality types or energy types tends to irritate you the most. It likely represents your lowest color energy. We believe if color energy shows up in something as simple as riding an elevator, it likely shows up in everything that everyone does. The reason we generally don't notice it, we're usually just not looking for it. So the key to recognizing type or color energies in other people is awareness and paying attention. The good news is people are generally telling us all day long how they want to be treated. The bad news is we choose to ignore it most of the time. So what should we watch for? One of the best indicators is body language, as well as eye contact that somebody makes or does not make. Tone and pace of voice is also another great indication of color energies. Do you pay attention to the impact your tone and pace is having on individuals? Because it's 5 times more important than the words that you choose. Are you paying attention to the impact your tone and pace is having on others? Whenever you can be face to face with somebody, that's the best way you can determine what color energies are showing up. But we do need you to pay attention to color energies, even in things like emails. Take a look at the last couple of emails you sent out. There will clearly be some kind of color energy that resonates in your emails. What we'd like you to start considering is not who you are, but who is on the receiving end of those emails. So how about your voicemail? Does your voicemail send a message about your color energy and how you show up? Is it calm and quiet? Or is it more direct and stern and quick? Think about the message that your outgoing voicemail is leaving for people. Is there a high amount of detail within your voicemail message, or is it more about energy and enthusiasm? Take a listen to this voicemail. What colors do you actually hear in the outgoing voicemail message?
This is Scott. Leave a message.
How about this one?
Hi, this is Scott. Thanks for calling. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
What do you hear in this voicemail message?
Hi, this is Scott Schwefel, Director of Operations at ABC Company. Today is Tuesday, December 15th, and I will be in a meeting from 9 until 11:30 and again from 1 until 3:15 today. Please leave a detailed message with your full name and contact information, and I will get back in touch with you shortly.
And how about this?
Hi, this is Scott, and I'm so sorry that I missed your call. It's very important to me.
To sum up recognizing type in others, this is something that you can practice and work on each and every day. Anytime you enter into a conversation face-to-face, over the phone, or even through email, we'd like you to continue to work on recognizing type of the individual on the other end of the conversation.
So to recap where we've been so far in this video, we've talked about perception and how people see the world differently. We've talked about the insights, 4 color energies on a good day and even on a bad day when we overuse our gifts. We've talked about the Jungian psychology that underpins the model, and that has allowed us to go into the discovery profile, validate the overview that we read through, and then move into the graphs and the insights wheel. We then talked about recognizing type in others, and the last piece is once we understand all this about ourselves and others, what do we do with this information? What we do at this point is, while recognizing color energies in ourselves and identifying and recognizing color energies in others, we move to the place that they are. We communicate with others in their preferred style. Carl Jung called it the otherness of the other. It's our ability to look at and understand where someone is coming from and modify our own style to lean more into theirs. It's the most effective thing we can do when choosing to communicate with other people. One way to think about how we might lean into the color energies of other people is literally to visualize the preference flow graph. That's a graph that is under our control in any moment. Our ability to lean into the unique style of others is our ability to spike up a particular color energy in that moment because we believe we're interacting with someone who leads with that color. What would that look like? Well, one example might be, if I believe I'm choosing to interact with more fiery red because I believe I'm with someone who leads with fiery red, I might get a little more direct in my tone. I might even position my body language to be a little more direct with them also. In that moment, I would be spiking my fiery red energy in my preference flow to behave more like they are. Another example might be if I perceived someone led with higher earth green energy. I might actually pull back in my physiology and my body language a little bit. I might even become a little calmer and demonstrate a little slower tone of voice. I might do a better job of listening to their point of view and giving them time to reflect on the topic in front of us. In this moment, I would be spiking up my earth green. It's my attempt to make a connection to someone who leads with earth green energy. What if I'm with someone who leads with sunshine yellow? I would bring energy and enthusiasm and excitement to what we do. I would add to my physiology a little bit of body language and motion and energy because in that moment I'd be spiking up my sunshine yellow and making a better connection with them. And lastly, what if I find or believe an individual leads with cool blue? I might pull back or pull down some of the energy and enthusiasm, appear to demonstrate more focus, more realistic attention to the issue at hand. I would even support my conclusions with data. I would bring as much as I can in writing to let someone with high blue energy know that I am thoughtful and have analyzed the information in front of us. That would be a stretch of cool blue energy, which would show up as a spike in the preference flow graph in the middle. What these examples should help you realize is that your ability to lean into the style of others can be viewed through the language of color. Spike the insight's color energy of the color energy that you believe the person leads with, and you will make a better connection with them in every instance. This is the power of communication using the Insights Discovery model. It's yours to use. Again, as Linda said, it takes awareness to understand where someone is coming from, to lean into their unique style. Dial the colors up when they serve you and dial them back when they're no longer needed.
Thanks for watching our Insights Discovery Debrief.
Beginning to get an idea.
We've also explored
Sometimes one's followed by two, followed by three.
Let's talk about what's in I'll tell you what to do with that after This is so much freaking harder than it looks. Feedback around the question marks that you put next to the sentences. Then they can go
Not show up as often to others being analytical, prescriptical, and ticket-fica-chica.
to live with it.
It ranges from
Really do tell us
My laptop died.
color energy. Thanks for watching this Insights Discovery. Yeah.
That was a mistake. I was on such a good roll.
Insights uses a 4-color model.